Welcome to Happy Hill, the podcast. We deliver meaningful content to grow your faith, well-being, and lifestyle. Hey neighbor, I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray, lifestyle coach, inspiring others to develop self-worth through leadership applications that will enable them to live in purpose. Welcome to the neighborhood. Happy Hill, the podcast. Welcome back to Happy Hill, the podcast. I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray, and today we have a special guest, a dear friend of mine that's definitely not a stranger to the neighborhood. During the pandemic, we linked up on Instagram and had a good chat about career navigation. And today we're going to kind of be in that same theme, but do it from a different lens. You know, one thing I would say um, throughout this series of Happy Hill the podcast, our series that focus on leadership, we call it School of Leadership. And the overarching theme, if I had to put a theme to it, is about self leadership around, hey, boosting your confidence, self leadership about how do you build up your perseverance, self leadership about learning from your past, self leadership about just having that grit to continue on. And this right here, again, as I said, my dear friend Joe Drew-Hundley is no stranger to the neighborhood. I have known this guy for quite some time now. It's been a couple years. Have even vacation with this dude, him and his wife. I know his family, so this is going to truly be just a two homies trying, connecting.
Yeah.
We definitely. I want to say thank you for joining us on the neighborhood and sharing your experience around as we talk about different things as relates to self leadership. One has been a topic of discussion around burnout and quiet quitting. So we're going to
Yeah.
talk about that, in which my good buddy's going to share experience. But Joe Drew-Hundley, just to kind of introduce him, he's a husband, he's a father. He has tons of experience in the corporate setting, over 15 years, close to 20 years in different corporate roles. So, when it comes to navigating his career or navigating your career, when it comes to leadership, you know, flexing your leadership skill in so many different ways, he has definitely done that, which I have seen him do that firsthand. So, welcome to the neighborhood. Welcome back to the neighborhood, my good buddy, Mr. Joe Drew-Hundley, man. How you doing, man?
Well, Jay Murray, man, I appreciate that. It's always great to get, introduction like that, especially when I get the opportunity to be on this platform. Like you already described, you my brother. So all it takes is one call, and I'm always gonna be down to support. But I love what you're doing, and can't wait to dive into the conversation. I absolutely have a lot of things I can talk about when it comes to just my leadership journey and
Yeah.
just the whole self leadership. I love that concept because that was something that you got to absolutely put purposeful effort into, or to get away from you.
Yeah. Totally, man. It's
Yeah.
it's and again, family, definitely if you have enjoyed this, definitely share it with someone. Definitely make sure you subscribe to all our platforms where we are available for the podcast, YouTube, as well as Spotify and Apple, and share with someone. Because as I said, I want this truly to speak to the inner leader in you, but also I want this to help raise up the next generation of leaders. As we think about the young individuals that's out there. One thing that I want to share with the audience, family. You know, Joe, Mr. Joe, he was once my direct leader. You know what I'm saying? He
Yeah.
was once my direct leader, where we was at the same place of employment. And I guess kind of Joe, like knowing what you know now, bruh, I would
Yeah.
love to kind of hear your thoughts because I know we have talked about um you learning how at that time how to really differentiate and friendship, setting business boundaries and expectations and
Yeah.
separating friendship from those particular boundaries, man. So I know for me, one word that comes up to my mind is around accountability. But I would love to
Yeah.
kind of hear your perspective on
Hmm.
your journey, based on your journey that you have experienced now, and when you look back, to where you was direct leader, and you was not only my direct leader, but with other, friends. Like when you think
Yeah.
about that, like what was some of those highlights or moments that you kind of go back and say, that that
Man.
was a nugget.
So here's the thing, Jay. Knowing what I know today,
Yeah.
that was my first official formal leadership opportunity, right? So you're
Hmm.
talking about going back, I don't know, 14 years.
Yeah.
Um, I can't be I couldn't be more thankful that the friends that were in that situation with me were
Uh-huh.
real true friends. So the accountability wasn't just coming from me who had the title. Friends like you weren't going to allow me to fail or look bad in that situation by putting me
Hmm.
in a position to try to have to choose friendship or favoritism.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky, knowing what I know now, seeing nepotism in its most toxic form and all
Hmm.
of that throughout my career. I'm thankful that the friends I had between yourself, I come to mind, I think it was shout out to RJ, who
Hmm.
was my college teammate, basketball teammate, and then became my direct.
Hmm.
But it was two people, yourself, him, and others, who the friendship was too important to allow the corporate opportunity
Yeah.
to, be compromised.
Hmm.
And so I'm thankful that I didn't have to choose. We still hung out.
Yeah.
Our family still hung out. We still, we were able to at work be at work. And we still had fun at work, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I never felt like I had to treat you differently because you was my boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe that if I did, you would have said accountability, like, look, nah, man, I don't mess up this opportunity because I'm always be your boy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's something that I'm thankful that I didn't have to go through the hard lesson of managing your friends.
Yeah.
But if you remember correctly, I not too soon after that decided to shift my career path and go a whole different route.
Yeah.
Part of it was because the feedback I got was, "Are you too friendly?" You
Mm.
know, so it wasn't even about like, "Are you friends with Jay Murray?" It was, "Are
Yeah.
you too friendly in general?" And so that just wasn't the right leadership opportunity for me. The environment they wanted me to create versus the person I wasn't right. So I shifted my career completely to get out
Yeah.
of that whole situation. But again, I'll say that I'm thankful that the friends were others who had integrity and didn't force me to come on, man. What's up with the hookup? I'm your boy. Like
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
ever felt
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
I have seen it, and I see it even throughout my HR experience, which I'm sure we'll get to talk about. I
Mhm.
saw it at its worst form, where people were obvious prior relationships get a different experience than others on the team.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
just to me that I just didn't want to go down that route.
Yeah. Yeah. When when people get that title, man, it can definitely, when you think about power trip,
Oh yeah.
and where people, hey, now I'm the front leader, you got to do what I do. Some people can handle that, but I would definitely say I think it was a learning experience for both of us, man. What I'm saying,
Absolutely.
for everyone that we knew, that was part of that circumstance that we were all in. It was a learning experience. When I think about it, man, we were all rooting for each other,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, and we were good at separating, knowing that, hey, you need to play your position.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And it was really, knowing what I know now, an insight to my theory around leadership, and that is leadership is not a title but a choice. You know,
Yeah.
because everyone on,
Absolutely.
on that team, it was a sales environment where we knew we had to perform a certain way, and we was all like, you took the best out of us, knowing that we was all kind of into sports and making sure, hey, let's
Hmm.
make it fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But at the same time, let's make sure we have accountability, man. And that
Yeah.
that part there, when you got to separate the friendship and make sure at the end of the day, bro, we got to perform. You know what I'm saying? And that was again, a really big benefit to me to see you play it out, because I learned from you of just different things, how you handle it. To when I
Yeah.
got into formal leadership, I was able to take in some of those nuggets, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I thought about too, Jay, uh, because if you remember, it was 10 people reporting to me on that team,
Yeah.
and I was younger. I was younger than all 10. So that also made it a little complicated where, you got people who are further along in their life than me. You got people with kids, and if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, one of the ladies on the team had kids older than us. And so just to have that different, thing that you had to approach. The thing I appreciate
Yeah.
is our relationship and my ability to be authentic with you gave me credibility with the rest of the team. That's like they
Yeah.
took me at face value because they saw how we interacted. Like that's just how
Yeah.
I was. And
Yeah.
so because I had a person who already knew me, who understood when the fun stopped and the work began,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think others observed that, and then it gave me a leg up. Like we had a very high performing team. It was
Mm.
because it was a fun environment. And
Yeah.
funny enough, I don't even know if I ever said my peers used to get upset that my team had so much fun, right? Because it made their teams look bad, make them look bad because their teams
Yeah.
were like, why are they over there laughing and with that and keying over there,
Hmm.
but then they're performing,
Yeah.
So it was an interesting experience, man. But like I said, I'll never forget how thankful I was that you were the friend, because we got some other
Mm.
friends, and maybe even in our friend group, that
Hmm.
probably wouldn't have had the maturity to
Oh
handle
yeah.
that and would
Oh
put
yeah.
me in a difficult situation when
Oh
I
yeah.
wasn't ready. I wasn't mature yet.
Mm. Mm. So quick question, and I definitely want to kind of take somewhat of a history, lesson, or just kind of looking at your uh career, your corporate experience, and just kind of just walking us through different roles
Crazy.
that you had
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
in. When you look at that role, your first leadership role, again, I want to make sure I get this correctly. Did you feel like, or did you feel like you were not prepared, or did you have that feeling?
That's a good question, man. Um, so I had a temporary leadership role at the same organization leading the
Hmm.
contractors the year before, which was a harder job in my opinion because you're working with people who weren't employed by the company.
Yes.
So all of my feedback had to go through their liaison and back to so that was tough. So
Hmm.
I got prepared for like challenging leadership,
Okay.
right? But that environment was sales. I was new to sales.
Hmm.
And so it was tough to learn consultative sales while trying to figure out how do you lead this team of seasoned professionals.
Yeah.
The
True.
previous
True.
experience, there are a lot
True.
of younger people. You think
True.
about the profile of a person who may take a contract is probably earlier on. They're trying to figure out their life, trying to figure out their career, versus this team are people who, quite frankly, have been working as long as way longer than I have been an adult,
Yeah.
and so that was just it was a different experience. So I wasn't prepared necessarily for the range of
Mm.
types of people that I would
Yeah.
have to understand and deal
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
but just for lack of better terms, the X's and O's of leadership.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got a pretty good trial by fire, working with that temporary team because
Mhm.
I experienced everything with that group. Just think
Yeah.
about the profile
Yeah.
of people. You experience a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and so I was thankful for that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And just on that, family, as we kind of, a lot of nuggets, a lot of gems going to definitely be provided throughout this conversation. And one thing you just said is that you taking on that role that stretched you, you know,
Hmm.
that provided you that experience. And a lot of times we have to, especially young leaders, as they take on different leadership roles, we can't be hesitant to take on those leadership roles, knowing that, hey, we may be leading tenured associates. We may be leading individuals that at probably our mom and dad age,
Yeah.
and where they have a lot more experiences. But I'm telling you, no matter the circumstance, it's going to teach you, right? So no matter the outcome of you really just trying to do a great job, in which I think you should just get that out your head and just do the job, and don't worry
Yeah.
about you want to make an A, because it's going to help to build so much of your leadership muscle. It's going to help you down the road. It's going to help and prepare you for those next journeys, those next
Right.
seasons that you experience in
Absolutely.
leadership. And
Absolutely.
kind of talking about seasons, like Joe, kind of walk us through, man,
Yeah.
your like career journey thus far.
Absolutely.
To where thinking about the different skills, maybe highlighting the different skills you learn in these different roles, maybe the industry, kind of highlight the industry or the focus of the role, and how it kind of resonated with you, and just different things that you learned during that time.
Absolutely, man. No, and it's funny. It's trying to think back all these years, man. It's been a heck of a ride, right? And I met you in my first season, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you set the context for how long we've been, rocking, and how long we've been friends. And my
Hmm.
first professional season, is when you and I first, got connected. So, starting off working in the financial world, working in investments, and going into a world I had no experience in, but got the job out of college, get your FINRA series license, and be able to talk to customers about their investment choices.
Yeah.
Bro, one of the things I learned about that, that started me off on a really good foot was the organization we had phenomenal training, right? So I began to pick up that I had a knack for learning new things and
Hmm.
being able to digest it and then deliver it in a way that could speak to a CEO or speak to an intern.
Mm.
And that wasn't a skill that I necessarily stretched in college, but I started to kind of recognize it, like, we are all, this, we got our licenses in a classroom environment. I would be able to read the book and then help a peer understand it at a more digestible level. And so
Hmm.
it was foreshadowing to where my career went without even
Hmm.
knowing it back then. And
Yeah.
I also very quickly became an informal leader. Um, One, leadership is something that's been in me. I was voted basketball captain back in high school, in college, so that was something I was claim to fame. Um, my high school in the superlatives, I was
Mhm.
voted most likely to be president. This was a predominantly white high school.
Mm.
So, I walk so Barack can run,
Yeah.
is what I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah. So,
You was the first. You was the first Barack, huh?
so shout out to, once you see the happy hood, Barack, hit us up. So yeah, so that was a really cool thing to go through that experience early on in our career and start to understand, like, there's some skill sets here that I didn't
Mm.
even really know I had.
Yeah.
That then led to being identified as a leader, and like I mentioned, and getting a chance to train. So I got a chance to help new classes, and that's where I met you. Was I was a person who was helping the newer classes learn the job,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
think immediately it was just like a connection,
Yeah.
obvious things, but then, we were in similar places in life, similar
Hmm.
ages, though you a little more seasoned than me, um, same interests, and so it was just a quick bond, quick
Yeah.
friendship,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I didn't know would be a thing to talk about in a couple years, because then we would have to be in a situation where I was your team leader. Which, by the
Mhm.
way, you I gave you all the flowers. You handled it as great as a friend could. But when I would come over your house, the supervisor here, y'all. They go to the supervisor. Everybody be cool, So I think it made it
I
so
did
funny,
ride
and
him a
it,
little bit, y'all. I did.
the supervisor, y'all. Hey, what y'all do? Put them drinks down. The supervisor here. So that
I said,
that
here come
used
the
to be
suits. Here
hilarious.
come the suits.
That used to be hilarious. But yeah, so doing the individual contributor role, talking on the phone, getting a chance to train and as a peer and just help other people, the
Hmm.
lessons you learn around how to deliver, how do I give you feedback to help you when I'm not I have no seniority.
Yeah.
And so those experiences help my leadership voice. And it's something that kind of stayed consistent throughout my career, is that I don't take, it's a title, but I don't take the approach like, oh, I'm higher than you, you go listen to me. Like,
Yeah.
that's never been my approach. Even as I progressed through my career and got higher titles, that's just not who I am. But it started from having to create command and get people to listen to you when you have no seniority over them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very authentic conversation. It's being, honest, but also being empathetic, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what people's love language is and using that and adapting to them versus trying to make them adapt to you. So it was a variety of things that I was able to kind of learn and stretch those muscles prior to ever getting a formal leadership opportunity. Um, I then went to the United Way, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You showed it.
helped
Yeah.
it-
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
loaned me to the United Way to do fundraising. So the lessons I've always said one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. It was only like 5 months, 6 months, but I was going to workplace campaigns. I was meeting with employees, meeting with leadership, meeting with CEOs of some places, and talking about their campaigns. But just understanding how to change your delivery based on your
Mm,
audience.
talk about it, man.
This is
Yeah.
2008. We all know what's happened in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going into these workplaces asking them if they want to donate to United Way when we're going through
Yeah.
a recession.
Financial
We're in
crisis.
the
Yeah.
financial
Yeah.
crisis, and I'm very
Yeah.
well aware of it because I come from we're in the world where we're talking to people about losing their whole retirement
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
invested, and so that was and then also the public speaking started. That's where I started to
Mm-hmm.
understand that, like, I got a little bit of charisma. I can kind of use this to my advantage, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be such a tight, what, like
Yeah.
I can be a little loose with it and bring a little
Mm-hmm.
flavor, add a little seasoning to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that those experiences started to come with that. Fast forward, coming back to getting formal leadership opportunities. That's when we connected in the sales group,
Mm-hmm.
and I did that for 2 years, where leading a sales team. But I realized that my only path forward it felt very linear,
Yeah. It did.
especially
Yeah.
at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
since I feel like the organization has maybe morphed a little bit, and but
Totally.
back then it was way more rigid. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
if I wasn't willing to move to a new state, it was a very linear path.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I hope, if any people who are, young people or just people in their career who just thinking about things, one of the things I have to impress, and I've met 3 times, I think I've done this, is nothing wrong with taking a step back to move forward.
Man.
Um, and it feels a lot different when it's a voluntary step back.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel that bubbling, you may need to identify that step before they identify it for you, because it feels a whole lot different to say, hey, I'm willing to take this, versus to be demoted. Like, I never felt
Yeah.
I've ever been demoted, but I have
Mm-hmm.
taken a step backwards, and it actually accelerated my career way farther than I probably even imagined prior to the decision.
Yeah.
So we had the internal internships.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanna just for a minute there, because
Yeah.
that is so key, right there, what you just said. And I definitely
Okay.
don't want to gloss over that and really kind of pick some gems from it. You said, hey, don't be concerned when you have to take one step back or take 2 steps back, to take one giant leap forward. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? Like don't
Absolutely.
be concerned about that. And I want to somewhat kind of thread this to some of our overall discussion around the burnout and the quiet quitting,
Mm,
because
mhm.
based on what is the topic of discussion in the corporate setting now, you kind of took somewhat of that, or you kind of performed or looked at it from the lens of, I'm not motivated in
Right.
this current situation that I'm in now, you know and I think to have that, I don't know what that type of forward thinking, that
Yeah.
you knew the end goal or where you was going, and you knew, hey, let me take a step back and assess the entire, look at it very holistically, so I can get
Right.
some clarity going forward. Like kind of talk to, like, your emotions about, hey, taking a step back? Did you feel like uninspired, or was it, something that, what, I'm just not feeling this, or like,
Right.
what was your
It,
thought process in that, man?
man, I'm trying to go back to many years. I,
I
I,
know.
I, I definitely, I'm not gonna give myself, it's always like when you revisionist history, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was a genius and I saw the future. Like, no,
Yeah.
that's not what happened. Like I'm gonna be honest about the situation. It was I learned a lesson early on, and I'm trying to put my fingers on how this came to me. I'm sure it was a mentor or someone just
Yeah.
sowing seeds into me.
Yeah.
I really got this thing around maximizing your strengths, right?
Mm,
And so when I sat back and assessed the situation I was in, yeah, it was cool. I was one of the youngest, if not the youngest, leaders. Walking around.
mm,
I'm representing a minority demographic. All that
mhm,
felt good to be in leadership, but I didn't feel like I was maximizing my strengths. I felt like
mm.
I would have forever just been good. Nah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Ooh.
he's
Ooh.
good. He's a good leader.
Mhm,
People like him. He's good. But I didn't feel like I had the necessary strengths or even the desire to be great in that type of
mm,
role.
mm.
Especially some of the parameters that are around it, the call center environment, some of the things that
Mhm.
I just wasn't necessarily a fan of.
Yeah.
And so I had to when I focused on maximizing my strengths, it allowed me to see more clearly, like, here's an opportunity over here. This was
Mm,
an internal internship, individual contributor role, technically reporting to, one of my homies who I was mentoring, you
mhm,
know, like, so that really was the situation. Like she's a friend of mine. I'm helping mentor her. She's like, hey, I got a role on my, but you basically be reporting to me.
mhm.
Okay. There's no ego here. There's no ego.
Yeah.
I know my strengths and I feel very secure. And I know that when I put in that position, I'm going to do well. And so that's
Mhm,
when I took the role to do university relations and
mhm.
begin this HR journey that I started down. But that was the first step, was to take that internal internship,
Yeah.
do that for a couple months, and I never came back to the business.
Yeah.
And that was my goal. I was like, I'm not coming back to the business. And so I had to make myself indispensable in that world. And
Mhm.
that's what happened. I didn't continue on university relations, but the training team, the
Yeah.
university within the organization picked me up because
Mhm.
of some of the presentation skills, the facilitation skills that I was learning in the United Way, that I was learning in university. So
Mhm.
it was more puzzle pieces were being added to my overall bag of tricks.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
started to find ways to maximize those strengths in different worlds
Yeah.
and different jobs. So
Yeah. 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 Two.
I'm
Two.
thankful for the foresight.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things here, like family, and especially to young leaders, things people are just kind of starting out in corporate America, even just in entrepreneurship. Don't always go for the title. Sometimes
Right,
you got to go for the experience.
right,
And you really got to
absolutely.
dig into the details of what this experience or what this opportunity going to provide to you. Because you just heard Joe, like, hey, I want an opportunity to maximize my strength, to continue on sharpening what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? And then on top of that, that allow you to really continue on your journey, because understand, like, this journey is not always going to be so linear. you know it's going to be up, down, sideways, and across. You know what I'm saying? And it's okay, brother. We all family, man. You know what I'm saying? So we
Of
all
course.
family, man.
Of
um
course, yeah. The little ones want to get a little guest spot, I guess, on the show.
yeah. But as
Yeah.
as you move more into human resource, like, walk us through some of your experiences, and just different things that you learn.
Yeah, no, it's human resources is something, man.
Yeah.
It's been something. So as I mentioned, going into recruiting and doing university recruiting took me into learning and development, and I
Mhm.
had no idea how wide that world was.
Mhm.
So getting opportunity to get exposed to not just the things I like, which was facilitation, being able to stand in front of a group and talk. You know me well enough. I like to talk, so
Mhm.
that was cool. But just understanding how to how to motivate adults, because adult learning is completely different, and
Mm-hmm.
so I started to begin the beginning phases of understanding how people tick, and how do I get the most out of Jay Murray,
Mm-hmm.
again, in a place of authority, but not like
Yeah.
technically I'm not your leader,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Mm-hmm.
had to create leadership, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that it was a really cool experience. And I really rode the learning and development wave for a fairly long time. So,
Mm-hmm.
my last few years at, our first organization where we met, all training, all learning and development. And then that shifted me into a new opportunity where I start to take that skill set and be able to use it as a sales tool for
Mm-hmm.
external clients. So I would
Mm-hmm.
go train clients on the software that our company was selling.
Mm-hmm.
But I would get the chance to demo it prior to them signing on with the company.
Yeah.
These are like broker dealers and things of that nature. So I
Mm-hmm.
was starting to kind of build up this ability to sell again. So
Yeah.
some of those sales skills that I
It's
was
coming
helping
back.
you all with is
Mm-hmm.
coming back, and I'm now putting that in place with the learning and development. And there's
Mm-hmm.
a world where this is a thing, and there's somebody who will actually pay you and put you in a pretty nice position if you have those skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually rose pretty well. And then 3 years, I had an assistant vice president title with no direct reports.
Mm-hmm.
That might have been one of my best opportunities ever to have that title, but not to have to, not to have anybody directly reporting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was no shock that people leadership was going to pull me right back in,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that, if it's a natural thing, it's going to become obvious and pull you in. So,
Yeah.
my official HR experience, maybe 5 years ago, I got a call from a friend,
Mm-hmm.
who we both would know, and he was doing recruiting for a startup, and he called and was like, "Hey, I need somebody. Are you willing to move to Michigan and be a
Mm-hmm.
part of the startup company? I can't even tell you about it. You got to sign an NDA first." Like, that's how crazy it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was intrigued, so I took the opportunity. Thankfully, I would have to move to where I'm from, to the Detroit area. So
Mm-hmm.
as much as I love Charlotte, leaving Charlotte was hard, but at least moving to where I still had family structure, so that it wasn't that challenging of a transition. Still very challenging. Just the winter itself was challenging, but that was just a whole new opportunity. So here go your next nugget was, coming out of what I was doing. Had a lot of good success,
Mm-hmm.
accelerating very fast. But here was a stretch opportunity that could potentially be life changing for myself, career
Mm-hmm.
changing, but also have an impact on my family.
Yeah.
So now my mind is shifting into, how do I make decisions that not only can impact the now, but can have an impact on the tomorrow? How
Yeah.
do I now begin to inspire my kids to say, there's nothing we can't do. If you really, really want to try it, and you
Mm-hmm.
really have the work ethic for it, go after it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I went from sales, learning and development, the things that we were doing, registered rep, to HR manager in automotive
Mm-hmm.
at a electric vehicle startup. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what? How did this even happen? No HR generalist experience, and I'm leading the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's also a good point. I know you've talked about this, but leadership is transferable.
Mm-hmm.
So while the knowledge, the technical skills are something I had to learn, the leadership stuff stayed the same. So
Yeah.
now I come into a team of people who look at me like, you got no experience as HR, no experience in automotive. And this is a new sector of automotive.
Mm-hmm.
But that same skill set that I approached the team of all the people older than me, including you, I use that same approach to them. Just a very
Mm-hmm.
authentic, open leadership. It's a discussion. Let's talk. I have the title, so if something goes wrong, that's my fault, and I'll take
Yeah.
that. Something goes well, that's the team's grace. That's the team. The team gets to shine for that. Let's work together. Let me empower you to help me learn, and I'll stand by the decisions that we make.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
And it worked.
one thing that you hit on, man, and one thing that I have truly admired by you is, as you mentioned, being authentic, being authentic, and your authenticity, I think, truly allows you to be adaptable.
Yeah.
You know, like having that ability to be adaptable, having that ability to understand, as you mentioned, through these years of experiences that you have done up to that point, able to think about or understand your audience and able to
Mm-hmm.
deliver a message and communicate to them by knowing your audience, whether you're talking to mid managers, or you're talking to senior managers, or you're talking to entry level individuals, knowing how to shift your communication skills based on your audience, man, is definitely something that I always admire about you. You know, when you think about that leap that you did to come back home, and as you mentioned, where you had to kind of think about it in so many different. Well, you had to assess, and not only that, hey, how this will impact you, but also impact your family. You know,
Yeah.
like what was some of those, knowing what you know now,
Mm-hmm.
what was the biggest things that you learned through those communications, through those times where either talking to your wife or making the adjustment more seamless? Like what was some of the
Yeah.
biggest things that you learned during those
Absolutely.
transitions?
Here go another one. Just again being authentic, and I want to make sure I come back to a point you just made. But just to answer
Yeah.
this question, I can't say I had the foresight to know this was the right decision.
Yeah.
And I bet if you pulled them off the kitchen table and had them talk, they'll have a different perspective.
uh
But for me, I thought the best decision I made was bringing them along on the journey. Like
mm,
it wasn't just me, like as much as I
yeah.
can get them involved when we bring them to the office, let them see what we were doing, let them,
mm,
I had
mm,
my oldest is in a STEM school today, but I remember he came to work with me once and sat with one of the engineers,
mm-hmm,
and they were using CAD, program, the engineering program CAD, and he was just asking, I'm working, and he's just asking this guy question after question, and he's answering it, and I'm just sitting there. And he's like in third grade, and to see
mm-hmm,
now where this is a real life interest for him, and these are
yeah.
things that it was part of the journey, bringing along on the journey.
Yeah.
Like this is not
Wow.
just about what I'll gain from it. What
Yeah.
are you all gaining from it? Our youngest, I believe, he's a environmentalist now. You know what I
Mm-hmm,
mean? Like, and we moved to electric vehicles where the whole thing is around sustainability and around how do
mm-hmm,
we protect the future,
mm-hmm.
and just being able to come home and talk about that kind of stuff. Now you got a person who's like, how do we save this? How do we save that? And
He
that's their
sees it.
focus.
He feels it. He's
You
able
see,
to touch it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you can't throw a paper towel roll in the trash in his house. It's like, no, 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 that isn't that recycle? Don't you recycle it? Like, so that part I think was the best decision without
Wow.
prescribing it. Was like, this is
Hmm.
our journey. There's some commercials out there from the company that my whole family is in.
Mm.
So just to think and just seeing the pride that they have in the company
Wow.
make the difficult transition easier, because
Yeah.
we all in this. It ain't just dad on his own. Like, we're
That's
all in it.
big,
You
homie.
know what I mean? So that was I'm thankful that the opportunity allowed it. My
Hmm.
personality created, like, I ain't afraid to ask. So when they're
Yeah.
like, hey, we're thinking about doing this, I was like, oh, we'll do it. Like, my whole family. I want my whole family to be in that. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
I even think about it. The commercial they shot, my parents were sitting on the porch. They didn't want to be in a
Wow.
commercial, but they
Yeah.
were sitting on the porch. And so I was looking
Wow.
over there, seeing the pride that they were having.
Yeah.
And so now they're watching. So now they're being like, hey, however we can help. I see you're doing some amazing stuff. Bring the kids over here more. Do
Wow.
we want to make it as easy as possible, because we're so
Yeah.
proud of the work that you're starting to do, and it all came from the exposure of, it's a package. You're not gonna just
Hmm.
get me in here. It's us,
Yeah.
especially because it weren't that many people who look like us either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
another thing that created pride around it. Is we're an affluent family too, and we just don't look like the affluent that You know what I mean?
Mm. Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
very very thankful of that. And if I could, one thing that you said around being able to adjust my voice, right?
Mm.
And I appreciate anytime somebody who I admire say they admire me, that it always feels good. So I appreciate you saying that. Um, The one thing though is, even though I was always able to change my approach, I stayed true to like my own delivery. Like I
Yeah.
always had a little Detroit in there, right? Like, and I'm thankful that I didn't have to like to
Mm-hmm.
button up. Like, even
Yeah.
back in our experience when we were to wear suits every day,
Mm-hmm.
I still was able to bring my own flavor to it, and it
Yeah.
just kept evolving to the point where I was like, I remember I'm an HR manager walking around this company, and they're like, I've never seen an HR manager wear Jordans to work. I'm like, well, I I'm wearing them every day, so
Yeah.
but it was just that being able to be your authentic self and still adjust to
Yeah.
go sit in the room with a CEO and then go sit in the classroom with interns and have
Mm.
both of them have the same reaction to you, and you
Yeah.
still be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I didn't wash who I was.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Being
that's something
being
I appreciate.
yeah, yeah. Being your authentic your authentic
Hmm.
self.
Yeah,
It's true. It's truly big, man. It's
yeah,
truly
yeah,
big. And as we talk about again, you have definitely have had a variety of experiences that help to shape and mold you to what you're
right.
doing now, as you said, has things that have truly accelerated your career journey based on you taking that step and really going after these opportunities. But as we all know, challenges will occur. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? Challenges
absolutely.
will occur throughout this journey, and at times we have to really persevere through them. And one challenge, man, that I wanted to touch on with you, and again, it's about this topic of discussion that's on all different. If you think about all the different news outlets, or if you just watching the different business channels, is about this burnout and
Yeah,
different things that we're seeing the behaviors from employees as they try to combat burnout, as you hear now, this
yeah.
quiet quitting,
Quiet quitting. Yeah,
as a phrase of people. I'm only gonna do this much, based on what my
right.
job requirement is. I'm not gonna be staying up at night answering emails. I'm gonna have boundaries. This is when
Yeah,
I'm on at work. This is when I'm off. And something that you just kind of experienced through your own challenge of really going through somewhat of burnout yourself, man. And
oh yeah,
I definitely want to kind of talk through that.
yeah,
And you can you can start at any at the time that you felt it to the build up.
yeah.
How it's
So
no matter how you want to start. Go ahead.
yeah, man. Look, it's funny because I think my exposure to it is probably even more than the average person because
Mm,
of the startup environment. So if a
yeah,
person has
yeah.
never been in a startup,
Mm,
it's hard to articulate. Just like work is hard. I don't care
mm-hmm,
where you work at a 50,000 person company.
mm-hmm.
Depending on your role, your job will be hard. So I don't want to
Yeah,
diminish or make,
yeah,
but
yeah.
a startup is a different world because you wear so many hats. There's so much level of
Mm,
versatility, and especially founder led
mm,
startups, because now the image that we all reflect, what we all watch, is the leader, is the founder, and they
mm-hmm,
have a unmeasured amount of energy towards it because it's their baby. And so they're setting this precedent of this is how we do,
mm-hmm.
and everyone falls in line. But the difference is, I don't have an unmeasurable amount of energy or unlimited amount of energy. I ain't found this boy,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
it felt a little different. And so my perspective started to grow, just coming from large companies where there's somebody that does every job, to now
Mm-hmm,
being into a startup organization in an HR function where you interact with everybody. So you can find yourself doing a little bit of anything, right?
mm-hmm.
And so where my first exposure started to come, and I had too much energy to feel it early on because this was so new, it was fresh. I was doing a new job, I was learning every day. There was just so much going on that it didn't set in. But
Mm-hmm.
because I was in the human resource leadership function, I was helping leaders deal with it before we had a name. with their direct reports and their people. So I was watching people get burned out. I watched people walk off the job. I watched
Mm,
people quiet quit before there was a name to it because they
yeah.
just got to that point. And that startup environment pushes people to the edge. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was something that I was exposed to pretty early on. Um, it started off by me helping to try to coach leaders to help them coach their employees through it,
Mm-hmm.
especially at a company that didn't have the resources to invest in a wellness program and things of that nature. Like none of that existed yet. So
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to be a psychiatrist or, as well as, but it, where it started to shift for me, bro. And this is, I think, is something that's a lot of people understand and say, but sometimes your strength can be your weakness.
Oh, come on now. Come on now.
So
That's so
for
true.
me, my strength started to become my ability to coach leaders, to help leaders through challenging situations, to de-escalate situations. If a situation gets to a point where the most unfortunate thing has to happen, someone has to, no longer be a part of the team. It was my job to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, our leadership saw me and said, he's good at that. Ooh, he's really good at that. So my
Mm-hmm.
strength of being able to navigate those situations, coming back from going to ask people to donate money in 2008 when they needed money, and I'm in there asking them to donate, and just that empathy. Fast forward 10 years, and now I'm doing that in the HR environment, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, he's good at that." But the weakness of it is I didn't have the ability to compartmentalize. I love hard. I lean in as you get what you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as it started to compound and grow, I started to feel it heavier and heavier because you're dealing with confidential stuff. So it's not like you can just go talk about it to a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was just, and I find myself days losing sleep because I
Mm.
know that someone's job is about to be impacted. I'm be the one to have to tell them, and I'm gonna have to do it in a way that's so cool and calm and smooth that it kind of disarms them from their true raw emotions.
Mm.
And sometimes you struggle like, am I am I a part of the problem? Like, am I just a hired smooth talker here? You know what I mean? And so like that was something I had to start to deal with. And so as the years progressed, it started to weigh on me heavier. And I started to recognize it, the self-awareness kicking in. And I'm
Mm.
like,
Mm.
huh, like I'm accelerating. I went from local manager to global director in a year.
Mm. Mm.
But I'm like, but I'm growing, but I feel worse every day. Right. And another thing you notice is, and you know me like this, I'm a pretty even keel dude. I'm a jovial dude.
Mm.
I find myself in bad moods day after day. And that's just not normal. I have a very, I think you and I share this. Like, we're just
Yeah.
highly optimistic, like we
Mm-hmm.
just want to have a good
Mm-hmm.
time. That
Yeah.
that was going away. I wasn't socializing outside of work. It was become I didn't even recognize the person I was growing to.
Wow.
Um, and a lot of it had to do with me having the inability to compartmentalize, or the way it was described to me once was, I'm a responsibility sponge. So I was soaking up everybody's responsibility with no way to wring it out. So it was just getting
Mm.
heavy. While a sponge, the more water you put on it, the heavier it gets.
Yeah.
And so if you don't wring that thing out, it's just going to overflow eventually. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
was happening. I was soaking in everybody's responsibility, no way to wring it out. And it started to chip away. And it was the beginning phases, I would say, maybe a year and a half into my tenure in this startup environment is when I first started to see remnants of, like, a deteriorating mental wellness, where
Mm.
I had never experienced anxiety before.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never experienced, like, I'm asleep. Like, it's time to go to sleep. I'm going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting up. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm just staring in the ceiling and stuff. Like, it was things that was happening that I just never experienced. And
Yeah.
so that's when I began to kind of understand, like, oh, like, here, this is this is weighing on me. It's chipping away at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
wellness that I thought I had when it came mentally, and how much that impacts you physically as well. So um, that was the beginning. was just that HR generalist type of world where, yeah, I always equate it to like most people don't get feedback when it's good, right? It ain't that often that you get like, can I speak to the manager? This was an amazing experience. Man, I don't have to that often. Like it's more and more now platforms create it,
Yeah.
but your intuition, your natural thing is I want to talk about it when it's a bad experience. And so that's what my job was. It wasn't people calling me to say my manager is great, right? It was the other way around. And so, or the manager saying, my employee is great. How can I reward them? That wasn't the
Mhm.
calls I was getting, you know? And
Mhm.
so it was beginning to realize that I was soaking up everybody's negative. And because I had such a positive effect on people,
Yeah.
no one thought this might be too much for him to just
Yeah.
dump all of this on them at a global perspective in a job he's never done and nothing
Yeah.
he's ever had experience in. So I'm learning on the fly.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
One for demonstrating some vulnerability here. Um, as I just kind of as you were just as you was kind of talking, I a couple thoughts came to my head, and I've been kind of pondering on the whole theory around rest
Hmm.
and the ability to make sure that you're practicing rest,
Hmm.
and making it more of a lifestyle, how you're resetting yourself, how you are, releasing things, how you are prioritizing and setting boundaries, right? And one thing that as you were speaking, man, it's kind of as you get to it seems that you got to a point where you was feeling very restless, you know, and at a point where it was damaging some of your creative rest, you know,
Yeah.
when you think about not having ability to have an outlet,
Yeah.
not go ahead.
No, man, you just hit on something that I should have, I didn't. And you talking through the seasons.
Yeah,
One of the things that I had an opportunity to do early on is a lot of creative outlets.
yeah,
I was co-hosting a radio show
yep,
that we were
yep.
curating and hosting for 3 years on our own. I say our,
Mhm,
a team of us who we use it as a tool to highlight community, but we did it in a fun way that
mhm,
led to me getting hired all over the city of Charlotte to do like hosting events,
mhm,
emceeing things. Like it turned into a thing, and that was like
mhm,
my outlet. Moving here and then getting into this high stress environment that requires so much of your time, the mental fatigue that you get.
mhm,
Still to this day, I have not formally taken a step back into the creative world. And
mhm.
I'm not a man of regrets, too many regrets, but that's something that I continue to like trying to figure how do you turn the corner and get back into that space because I have a lot to give, but
Mhm.
just have not felt comfortable in getting there because mental fatigue and all the other
Yeah,
things and just the demand of the way that you're actually providing for your family,
yeah,
or the way that you're providing for family now. So that part was you hit the nail on the head with it was the intensity of the roles, in addition to not having that creative outlet outside
mhm,
of that to be able to kind of balance it.
yeah,
I did a lot of volunteer work, a lot of
yeah,
nonprofit work that I didn't do that once I moved. And so I
mhm,
didn't even have that ability to look in the mirror and say, good job. You went
yeah,
and you impacted somebody's life who was less fortunate than yourself.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Kudos to you and your fellas or your friends or your ladies or whatever it was.
mhm,
So that was a huge part of this equation that led to, the place I got to. So you mentioned rest. This was the beginning of it. I shifted roles and moved into a diversity role,
mhm,
thinking in my mind, this is gonna be the greatest situation I've ever done, right? I now get to be the face of something that's supporting people like me.
mhm,
What I didn't recognize that it was just going to be even more compounding of the things I was struggling with the responsibility sponge. But now it's at a whole deeper macro level. It's
mhm,
not just, I'm Joe, and as a leader, I got a problem with Jay Murray as my direct report. He's my
mhm,
friend and he ain't doing right. That's a one-on-one, very micro. And
Mm-hmm.
this next role is macro. It's
Mm-hmm.
groups that feel disenfranchised, groups that feel marginalized, groups that
Mm-hmm.
want to know what are we going to do to address X, Y, and Z things going on in our world. What's our company going to do to speak on that,
Mm-hmm.
talk about that? So it started to really explode when it came to that restlessness and
Mm-hmm.
just that inability to compartmentalize. And one of my closest coworkers today, still to this day, she leads wellness. So she's the head of wellness for our organization. And so
Mm-hmm.
very thankful to get connected with her because she's taught me a lot about wellness, about mental health. And one of the things she said to me is, you better choose to take a break before your body chooses to break for you. And
Ooh.
I was like it was, yeah, it was like,
Ooh.
man, because it is, you see it. Like if
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
don't choose to rest themselves, your body will force you to. And
Yeah.
it's a mechanism that our bodies have. They'll say,
Well,
shut it
shutting
down
down. Yeah.
before it burn out completely, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was something that I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
But I eventually got to a point where I took time off. I
Yeah.
went through the very challenging decision to take time away and just completely disconnect without knowing what was going to be on the other end of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the best decision for me and my family because I was at a place where it was going to turn off. It was
Yeah.
a matter of minutes before it's going to turn off. So
Yeah.
thankfully, I had the fortitude to speak up and say, I'm going to shut it down before it shuts down on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, when you think about it, I first thing come to my mind, like, as we talk, like, from like best practices, I love that quote. Hey, you need to choose rest before your body said, hey, it's time to rest.
Time.
Like that's so powerful, man. And as we have talked about things that's personal to us.
Mhm.
And I know, as you mentioned, around just the mental damage that you were feeling and seeing, and as you mentioned, not having that outlet to release it. I think, and again, this is to the family that's listening. I think one thing that I can say and have been there, the worst thing you can do is mag the pain. You know, that's the worst thing you can do, and find different ways to medicate it. You
Yeah.
know, because those things there is, it will take you more deeper into it, because now you're trying to normalize it. You
Yeah.
know, and that's going to really stretch you and start, and your body gonna say, oh, you we trying to shut it down. And I just want to
Mhm.
kind of go back to, as you mentioned, as you were starting to become more self-aware. And I think self-awareness is a level of acceptance, that you are accepting that I'm hurting. um I smell, you know what I'm saying? I'm
Mhm.
becoming self-aware of, this ain't right, or, oh,
Right.
the roof is on fire. Yeah, I try to deny it
Absolutely.
all this time. Like,
Right.
what was that process of you coming self-aware? Was it something that your family, your loved ones, kind of helped you to get there, or was it something that you had to kind of, you
Yeah.
know
Where the tipping point was. So I think it was gradual, right? It was me taking a step back, watching interactions. It was obviously trusted individuals, wife,
yeah,
mom, being able to say, like, this is just a little different. You sound different, you look different, your walk is different. Like, what's up?
hmm
But then I think where it really just, it was like the shining light. And it actually, um, I was around you right at the time. And
hmm
so, this past summer, I had a chance to, come back to visit, celebrating my birthday, hitting that big 40. And it was a NBA Finals game. Jay Murray, a couple other friends went out, had a couple drinks, had some food, watched the game. and I got a call from work that evening because there was some emergency that needed my attention. Though we all knew that, I'm outside. This is my natural birthday. It's 8 o'clock at night. Like I get this day to kind of be myself. I'm in no mindset to be working right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember that night, the night of the evening or the night, where it's supposed to be such a celebratory thing. It's a milestone. You hit 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Not a whole bunch of people who look like us get to 40 at a
Come
healthy
on,
space.
man. Come on, man.
And I'm thinking about work that night, right? And it's like, this ain't right. Like, I should be able to shut that off. Like, this is a monumentous occasion for me.
Mm-hmm.
That was then followed with a birthday trip with some friends and my wife, and we went to Jamaica, and I found myself waking up a couple nights thinking about work, sitting in this paradise with the person I love the most next to me, and I'm like waking up like, realizing like, bro, you don't have to work tomorrow, like
Mm-hmm.
we chilling. And I think that's when it started to realize like, oh, this taking over. The
Mm-hmm.
easiest way to separate from work is going on a vacation, especially beautiful situations
Unplugging.
like that,
Yeah.
with friends and and I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
unplug. And so I think that's when it was like the shining billboard for me. This is actually impacting you to the point where you can't even disconnect.
Yeah.
And I always had the perspective that yes, everyone loves their work and things of that nature, but it's not the priority in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
priority in my life is creating a lifestyle for my family while creating experiences, while being a productive citizen, and all those things. So to realize that I couldn't even separate it when I knew that this wasn't the most important thing in my life, that's when it triggered, and I was like, okay, and so very soon after that, is when I went down the journey of just taking some time away and just doing therapy work, hanging out with the family, and just really reflecting on how do I want to show up and how do I protect my
Mm-hmm.
mental well-being? How do I prioritize my mental well-being over the opportunity for acceleration in my career?
Mm-hmm.
Like, which one's more important? And that's the decision I had to decide on and make.
Yeah.
Is it accelerating to the top, or is it
Mm-hmm.
stopping about here but keeping all of this cool?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
finding other creative avenues, which is one of the things, like, again, I admire so much about you, is seeing your consistency and stepping outside of your, formal career, but just building a
Mm-hmm.
whole nother, with merch and everything out to the gratitude, and all the
Mm-hmm.
things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you got to make a decision of, can I supplement so that I can still, kind of keep my mental wealth at a level that I want. And that's a personal decision for every person.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
me, it was too big of a conflict, and I had
Mm.
to choose one. And it
Yeah.
became very apparent that for me, the choice was staying strong mentally and removing the situations that put me in a toxic space.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I'm committed to now that I'm back in it, and I'm back rolling back into that, every day. I'm not sacrificing that no matter what.
Yeah. 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 It's something, man. As you was talking, like, so two thoughts. The second one I'm gonna try my best to articulate. But the first one is family, like, you always, how can I put this? There's a cost to everything.
Or
There's a cost to everything. And just because when you and that's the level of maturity that you have to now come to this fork in the road, right? This intersection of of making a critical decision that yes, it can take you, can accelerate you. You can now be in a whole another tax bracket. You can now do all
Mhm.
these things. You know what I'm saying? But understand what's going to be the cost of it. You know,
Yeah.
because we know a lot of people that have chosen that have chose the career that have chose XYZ. It may not be career, it may be entrepreneurship, but the
Mhm.
cost of doing that led to other thing. It cost them their marriage. It cost them that their mental health. It cost
Yeah.
them this and the third, right?
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
have that type of leadership awareness to kind of come to a moment of, you know what? Let me assess this. Am I willing to give all this up?
Yeah.
My mental, like that's going to be a really draining. It's going to be a big mental lift.
Right.
That role is going to require me to really do a big. It's going to be a big mental lift for me. Do I really need that at this time? You know, because I'm
Right.
pretty sure you thought about your family, your kids, and now being in their life, you know, because they're at these critical ages that, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got to make sure I be around for this, because
Be around.
we at some critical ages that, I mean, you just blink and boom, they are,
Yeah.
you know, young men's and
Gone.
young women's.
Yeah.
You know
You're
what I'm
right.
saying?
You're
And
right.
that part, man. And I learned this from my son. And it's about playing your position. And what I mean by that, my man, like, so my son played flag football this year, and he started out playing center. And you know, as a father, I was like, "Dog, you playing center?" You know, like, come on, man. Like, I wasn't the proudest. Hey, family, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest with you. I wasn't the proudest. I'm gonna be
Right.
honest. But my man, the first couple games, he said, "Daddy, I like doing that." You know what I'm saying? I like, you know, hiking the ball. You know, the play starts with me. And I was like, oh boy.
Ooh.
I was like,
Ooh.
boy. He
Young
said, like, I
Murray.
mean, it's almost like he said, yo, I set the tone.
Yeah.
Because if I don't hike the ball first or hike it in an effective way, we lose it down. You
Yeah.
know,
Wow.
I'm telling you, man, how kids can teach us so many different things. And he progressed throughout the season to play other roles, but to see him play, like, I'm gonna play my position. And you come to that level of maturity. You know what? I ain't trying to score 40 points a game, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like those years, they're
Long
behind me.
gone.
Long ago, but I'm gonna give you 10. I'm gonna give you maybe 10 and 20, maybe 20 and 10. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna give you that,
Right.
and I'm gonna stay, and I'm learning, like, to your points. I'm gonna stay consistent with that. I'm gonna come in and shoot my three. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
in sports, man. I'm pretty sure you can count, you know, people that played their position. They were 3-pointers. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
3-point specialists. You know, when you need a 3-pointer, boom, they came in the game. And it's those
Yeah.
individuals that help to get the others, the superstars, to the championship. But guess what, homie?
Absolutely.
Everyone don't need to be a superstar.
Nope.
You know what I'm
Nope.
saying? And that's
That's
something
real.
that I'm learning. Like, hey, play your position, homie.
Man, and it's, to keep the sports analogy, there's Hall of Famers,
Yeah,
people who are forever enshrined in their sport, who weren't stars, who played their position though. Like the Dikembe Mutombo and Dennis Rodman are in the Hall of Fame for being really, really good at a role and just
yeah,
not can't having no ego. And it's hard to say this, even like a Draymond, like, for wherever people think about him, that man's gonna
yeah.
be in the Hall of Fame for playing his
Exactly,
position, for averaging
exactly.
9 points for his career. So like
Yeah.
what you're saying resonates so much, and it wasn't my mindset before, but it's
Hmm.
something that I matured into,
Yeah.
was just that understanding, and not that season changes.
Yeah.
That position, you may start off as a star, and sometimes it may be time to support the others. So
Yeah.
um that's a great point.
Yeah. 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 Cool, man.
Yeah.
I want to leave out with this question here. And we talking to Joe Drew-Hundley, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
A dear friend
Yes,
here
sir.
in the neighborhood.
A blueberry. I live in
A
Stone College
blueberry,
Blueberry.
yeah.
Yeah.
HBCU. Shout them out.
Let's
Shout
go.
them out.
Let's go. Let's
Um,
go. Yeah.
um, how would you define leadership? What does leadership mean to you?
Man, such a good question. Because you started with the whole thing. I think the cliche, easy thing to say is, this is like you said, it's a choice, right? A manager is a title, leadership is a choice. For me, leadership is it's accepting this opportunity to be a part of a journey where you have the role of pushing or pulling,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And being comfortable in that space and knowing that you have to adjust. Sometimes I need to push Jay Murray
mm,
as far as I can. Sometimes I
yeah.
need to pull him with me, right?
Mm,
And I
mm,
think for me, that that's maybe one of the more simple ways that I can break down leadership and how I've expressed, how I've experienced
yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and how I found success in it is understanding how to to I don't want to say get the most out of everyone, how
Yeah.
to inspire someone to get the most out of themselves.
Mm,
Like, we grew up, and this, but for the Happy Hood family, I'm the oldest of three boys. We were all basketball players, all very tall. My oldest brother is 6'9". My youngest brother is 6'9". Like we're tall people, but my father always has said like I'm not gonna force you out to play basketball. It's one thing you only go so far if I get the most out of you. But if I
mm,
inspire you to get the most out of yourself, you have the tools to take yourself as far as you want to go.
mm,
And like I felt like without knowing it, but I've applied that principle into how I've led is it ain't about my expectation of you. It's about your
mm,
expectation for yourself. And then how can I help you get there? How can I show inspiration? Then how can I stand up in challenging time? How can I take the fire when
mm,
to shield you from the fire when it's just not necessarily yours to take. But then how do I give you the praise and the shine when it is that time to get that? Like all of those things to me is what encompasses leadership and what I've tried to do. And understanding that fair and equal aren't the same thing, right?
mm,
And so like e- treating everybody equally when it comes to this, especially like corporate leadership, quite frankly, isn't fair because
mm,
everybody's in a different space. If I treat you the same way as this person, but you're in a whole completely different space in your life, in my opinion, that's not strong leadership because I'm not adjusting to you. I'm
mm,
applying a broad brush and making
mm,
sure everybody matches X. But everybody might not be trying to do that. I just want to
mm,
help you be the best version of yourself. Now, in a corporate world, the caveat is there are standards.
yeah.
So we have to be mature enough to
Mm,
understand their standards. So we can't go below this line. Like that's
yeah.
the
Yeah.
standard.
Mm,
But you determine if you want to go a million steps ahead of it or just a 5 steps ahead of it. And then it's up to me to help you maximize that,
yeah.
right? And not try to do it for you. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's to me is how I would define it. And again, that's how I've approached it throughout my time, 15 years of having teams reporting to me, which is
Yeah.
still crazy to even articulate.
Thank you again. I wanted my dear brother, Mr. Joe Drew-Hundley, coming to the
Mhm.
neighborhood, spending his time here with us on Happy of the Podcast. Family, do me a favor, be strong and know that you are created for greatness, and no matter what life may bring you, love God, love yourself, love your neighbor. I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray. Until next time, be blessed.
Thank you, Jay.